Welcome to Nick's Impromptu Reviews, and today we're going to review the classic board game Dungeon. And this version right here, this is the latest version, I believe. It's by Wizards of the Coast. It was originally published back in the early 80s, I believe, by a company named TSR. And as you know, TSR is famous for Dungeons and Dragons. This is an introductory game, mainly for kids, I believe. Some call it Dungeons and Dragons Lite. Some call it just an intro to Dungeons and Dragons, but it is based in Dungeons and Dragons universe. You fight monsters that you see when you play Dungeons and Dragons, but it's a lot lighter. I mean, a lot lighter. It's like a skeletal version of any dungeon crawl you can think of. Pretty basic, but it's pretty fun. When I was a kid, it was fun, and it's been out for a while, and nothing has changed since the first version. Does it stand the test of time? Let's find out.
So here's the entire dungeon board. It's a pretty decent sized board. You can see all the corridors connecting to the different rooms, and as you notice, the rooms are different colors and they represent how hard they are. For instance, level 1 is the yellow ones, which has easy monsters but little treasure, while green is the hardest. That's level 6 and they have tough monsters. And as you can see in the center of the board, that's where you start. And that is the place where you have to leave once you get your set amount of treasure. And once you do that, you win the game. Now these are the monster and the treasure cards. And as you can see, they range from level 1 all the way to level 6. 1 being the easiest level, 6 being the toughest. And once you get into those rooms, you draw the corresponding monster card. And it tells you what number you have to roll to beat it. And when you do, you get the corresponding treasure. Now, as the harder the monsters are, the bigger the treasure, and the weaker the monsters are, the weaker the treasure. Those are the spell cards. Only the wizard gets to have them, and they get to pick how many they can use for the game. And that's pretty much it for the cards. Next, these are the heroes, and there are only 4 classes. You have the human on the left, and you have the elf on the very right. Those are the weakest characters, but they only need 10,000 coins to win the game. While the others are the warriors and the wizards. They're stronger, but they need a lot more treasure to win the game. So I guess that's what balances it out. And of course, you have your counters, and I think there are only 4 types of counters you need. One is to mark how many rooms have been cleared with the monsters. Those are those tombstones right here. And I think there's placeholders in case you drop your treasure, and there's these lost turn tokens, as well as I think there's a +1 and +2 to determine what type of sword you have. And yeah, that's pretty much it. There's not that many types of counters, or at least they give you enough, so I guess that's always a good thing. And of course, you have your dice. Typical dice. Okay, so this is how you start the game. You all start in the Great Hall, which is the center of the board, and that's also the place where you have to go to escape after you get the amount of treasure that you need. So once you do that, you just go about fighting those monsters in the rooms, get the treasure, and once you do that, you go back to the Great Hall. And the first person to get to the Great Hall with their treasure wins the game. So here's how the gameplay goes. Each character gets to move 5 spaces per turn. And again, one flaw that I noticed in this game, if you notice, look at those spaces are very hard to see. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's a space or what's not a space. So you look at the board and you're saying, what? Is that 2 spaces? Is that 1 space? I don't know. I guess they're trying to, I can understand they're trying to make the corridors look authentic, but it can be annoying trying to find out if it's a space or not. And yeah, I think that's one major flaw of this game. And also those little stands on these cardboard figurines, they're not that sturdy. And I recommend, if you have Dungeons and Dragons figures, I recommend using those instead. So yeah, you pretty much go and walk around the board and take turns. And then once you get into a dungeon, like this right here, you draw the corresponding monster. And you flip over the card, and you look, you'll see a bunch of numbers in the back, and you look for the symbol of your character. In this case, my nephew Aiden, he is a warrior. So he's that purple symbol. So he has to roll a 7 or more. Okay, 7 or more to beat it. So he gets his 2 dice, rolls it, and he gets an 8, which is more than 7. So he beats the monster. The monster's discarded. Then he goes ahead and gets the treasure. He's a level 4, so he grabs a level 4 treasure card. And oops, he drops it. And it's $1,000 silver pot. So that's pretty good. And that's it. You keep going and just go inside dungeons, flip over the monster, roll a dice, kill it, get the treasure. And when you get your minimum amount that you need, the first person to do that and then get out of the dungeon wins the game. And yeah, that's it. Real simple, real basic, and not much depth. But like I said, this is probably a kid's game. And if you have kids who like to crawl around a dungeon, without looking at stats or, not worrying about level up, I guess this would be a good game. Okay, so this game has the basics at least. Loot, combat monsters, and well, that's it. And I guess that's all you need to make it qualify for an RPG, I guess. Oh, and one good thing about this is that you don't really die in this game. You just basically lose your treasure or get sent back to the center board. So you don't die, but you can be just a little annoyed. Yeah, it's sometimes frustrating. Like you're trying to beat a monster that you have to roll a 12, and you keep doing it, and you just keeps knocking you out. But yeah, that's it. I mean, real vanilla. It barely qualifies for a RPG, but like I said, this is for kids. So if you're not looking for anything serious, this game might appeal to you.
Okay, back when I was a kid, I had a best friend and he loved Dungeons and Dragons. I never really got into that with him, so this is probably the closest thing I had to Dungeons and Dragons back when I was a kid. And when I played this, I thought it was the greatest game in the world. This is the game that kind of broke me away from the classic traditional family board games like Life, Monopoly, Risk, Yahtzee, and all that. But this was the first. I guess you could probably say this is the game that sort of got me into all these games now that I do now. But yeah, back then it was great. I mean, going into a dungeon was cool, killing monsters was cool, getting treasures was cool. Okay, now, well, it's kind of, it's a really, really bare bone game. I don't recommend it for serious gamers. I do think it can appeal to kids and families, and if you want to play with your kids, I think this is the good game. This is a good game for it. I have a 10-year-old and 6-year-old nephews, and they love this game. Yeah, this would be a good intro to them to fantasy games and all other sort of I don't know, non-traditional board games. Now, it was good back then. Now, I know there are better introductory games than this now. Talisman, for instance, is one which I totally love, and I will review that eventually. This one's really, really bare-boned. It's kind of monotonous. I mean, this is like dungeon crawling at its basic form. I mean, it's a real skeletal version. You go inside, kill the monster, get the treasure. I mean, there's no leveling up other than like getting the magic weapons and stuff. But it's really, really bare bone. And I think nowadays there's some better intro games out there like this. I mean, for instance, there's one called Dungeon Fighter. Oh, that's a cool one where you get to roll dice. Maybe I'll review that eventually. But yeah, I mean, as a family game, yeah, I can recommend this as a family game. But as a serious board game for a game night with adults, no, nah. This is way too easy. So, I mean, the good thing is that it is for families, and I mean, that's always a good thing. You may want to play with your family sometimes, and this would be a good one to get. But as a serious board game, no, I think I'd give it a pass. And so overall, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would rate this a 5. Dungeon, this only if you have a family you want to play with. This is good for them. This is good for kids. Other than that, just give it a pass. Okay? So that's it, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.